You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. All right, Sox in the Basement, and I can't believe he's even going to jump on with us, but Ed is back after his heart attack. He is not actually at the 9-foot homemade oak bar yet. He is remote. I would imagine it's going to be that way for a little while. But my friend, it is good to just see you on the screen and know that you are okay. We got so many messages from people, thoughts and prayers, of course, and I was shocked when I heard that you were in the hospital and you'd had a grabber. So can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks to everybody who reached out through the Sox in the Basement account, through Twitter, wherever. Absolutely appreciate it. Helps a guy, get through something like this when he knows he's got people out there pulling for him. So I appreciate that. But, don't take anything for granted is what I would tell you, because, everybody always clutches the chest when they're pretending they have the grabber, or Chris Farley wearing the coconut bra punching himself in the sternum. For me, I thought I threw my shoulder out, which isn't entirely impossible because I've got one really good arm and one really bad arm, and the really good arm hurt, and I thought I'd just done something. And I even went to an orthopedic guy. I went to a walk-in and it had an x-ray done, and the guy looked at it and he goes, yeah, you probably need some PT. I can't do any surgery on it because it'll just wreck your life. And so I walked away thinking Tylenol, ice, rest it, and then, in a couple of days I'll start some physical therapy and maybe get through it.
Hold on a second. So how long did the heart attack last for?
Well, that's the thing, is it was coming and going all throughout the day because I had a blockage in the artery, right? So I'd feel pain, it'd get a little bit better. I'd feel some pain, it'd get a little bit better, but it wasn't until that night when I woke up feeling like I was running in a marathon and somebody had shot me in the shoulder, that's when I realized that something was, that's the bad one. That's the ER one.
That's crazy to me, because I would think, and we're going to get into other stuff, folks, so we're not going to spend 30 minutes on the heart attack.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about me for 30 minutes.
But I would think that the orthopedic guy has had that happen at least once before, where somebody comes in and says that, and when they answer the questions, they'd be like, you might be having a heart attack, you should be checked out. Like, you spoke to a doctor. Right? I know he's not a heart specialist, but it sounds to me like it's possible that's happened before. And with the x-ray being clean and stuff like that, I don't know, maybe I'm nuts. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe there's no way of knowing. Maybe you didn't describe it right. I don't want to be mean to the doctor. I'm not saying he's bad at his job, but that's scary to me that you had distinct things going on and nobody recognized it till you were laying in bed and it got worse.
Well, that's why I say, don't take anything for granted, because all I had was the shoulder pain. I was breathing just fine. My chest was not, I didn't have the elephant sitting on the chest or anything like that. I didn't have pain radiating up to my jaw or anything along those lines. It was shoulder pain, and it was the artery, is the branch artery that was blocked that probably, leads down into my arm and was causing it, that pain. And that's what it was. But, it's still... it's going to be a recovery, though.
Yeah, I mean, you sound a little different. I'm looking at you on the screen, and you look a little tired. And I'm not saying it to be mean, and I'm glad you're alive and you're with us, and I want you to take care of yourself, and I don't want you to do too much on this show. So please, for crying out loud, if you're like, I need a breath or something like that, just tell me. I'll rant about something, and I'll just keep going, and you can take a breath. And if you need to jump off before the show's over, I completely understand. I did not expect you on this show. My suggestion, folks, is that he called in, gave an update, and left. And he's like, no, I'll do the show. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do a show? So he's a trooper, and I'm glad you're doing well. And I was worried about you. I know all your friends are worried about you. I'm on way too many, multiple person text chats right now. And it's just the worst. If somebody opens up a massive, thread, and they want to talk about what's going on with you without you seeing it. This is how concerned people are. And I keep getting added to these things because we're friends and we're close. And my phone is going off constantly with what can we do and how do we do this and how does this happen and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if you got a question, just text each other directly. Why am I in this? So I've been very involved in what's going on with you because I keep getting thrown into these things where people want to talk about what's going on with you. And I'm like, I just talked to him. He's fine. Why are we stop fretting? All of you calm down. So I just want you to know
there were some worried folks amongst our mutual friends.
Yes, there's a lot of them. You know who gets the most worried? You know what it is? It's the single guys who are never married. or don't have kids or don't have kids, right? It's the guys that if they had one of these heart attacks, they don't know who's showing up to help them because they're really on their own. Those were the ones that it seemed like really it affected them the most. They're the most fretting ones and all the things. I'm not trying to pick on them, but it's really obvious. It's like the guys who like have been single their whole lives or like have no children and are divorced. Those are the guys that are like, oh my God, how could this happen? We can have heart attacks? I still thought I had a chance to date a supermodel. I'm going to die? Like, that's the reaction.
Yeah, well, and you know, the reality is that I was never going to date a supermodel. So
no, of course not.
You know, they still have a chance.
Right, me, it's possible for me. Okay, we've seen some that have come close in my youth, right? I mean, like it's possible. You, no chance. Okay, but I mean,
never a chance.
Now it would kill you. Now it would kill you. She would kill you. You'd die with a smile, but you would die. Okay, so I mean, I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm a few months away from even being able to look at that without.
Yeah, if you look too hard, you might have another one. So you gotta watch it. Gotta be very, very careful. All right, so you're gonna lose a lot of weight. I would imagine you got a stint. You're gonna take care of yourself now, and you're gonna like I saw one suggestion of something that everybody wanted to get you, and I was like, that's gonna make his cholesterol higher and give him another one. Knock it off. There's been some bad ideas of things to get you.
Well, yeah.
Can we get him amusement park tickets and like 20 pounds of like roast beef? No, we can't get him. Stop it.
See, those are the people that I think, those are the true colors that sometimes come out. I mean, there's the people that show that they care about you, but then there's the ones that are actively like, now's our chance.
Right. Do you think he wants to go skydiving? And beforehand, can we just go out and get him, like, we'll bring him to go do some, like, barbecue. And, maybe like with a lot of the fixins. And we'll get his arteries clogged just a little bit more, and then we'll go jump out of a plane. Like, some of the ideas of things to get you boggle my mind.
So they did settle on White Sox tickets, which is great.
I saw that, which I thought to myself, he's just going to go to the game and eat ballpark food and have beer and get stressed out because the team sucks and drop dead. Why would you give these to him?
Well, because at least I get the Star Wars Stony bobblehead. You know,
I was like, I couldn't understand why they wanted to stress you out with that. I did not pitch in for that. I want you to know that. I felt like I was contributing to your death. Okay.
Well,
I did.
I appreciate that.
When they said they were getting Sox tickets, I pretended like I wasn't seeing the messages, and I have not responded in that thread. I was like, I am not going to pay for him to go to a game so he can get stressed out eating a bunch of ballpark food and drop dead in the fifth inning. I'm not doing it. Okay. So for your own safety, I want to keep you as far away from this team as possible, because one of the things that Scott Merkin said on the last episode, and if you missed it, go back and listen. And I mentioned at the end, like, I'm going to wait for Ed because I want to get his reaction to some of these things. He was talking about the spending. It was kind of a throwaway comment. I want to know what you think of this. He's talking about the spending and how Chris Getz isn't going to spend. And I will tell you this, I love Merck. And I think he's great for information, and I think he's right there with the team. But there's always a little hidden stuff if you're really paying attention, right? Like if you're really paying attention to him, if I make a crack that the last guys that were in charge sucked at their job, and at least Chris Getz is doing better, he will immediately try to tell you Kenny and Rick weren't that bad. Because he worked around them for 2 decades. You get that? Like you become friends with these people, and he goes, they weren't that bad. I think they were. He thinks they aren't. Now, I don't hate him for the fact that he likes them, but if you're paying attention, you hear that stuff. So when I was talking about how the owner's cheap, right? And at least Chris Getz understands it, he starts to explain why they're not spending, and he throws in the idea that they're still suffering after the COVID year. And it was astounding to me. That has to have been something that's been said to him, right? Like he said it and kept going. He didn't make a big deal out of it. But you have to understand, if you're a guy who's from MLB.com and you're embedded with the team at all times and you have access to everybody from Jerry on down, somebody said, well, we can't spend because we lost so much money during COVID in 2020. It is 2025. I understand there are restaurants that are still dealing with it. I know a lot of restaurant owners. They need things to continue to get better because they took out all these loans. But that billionaire is not going through the same problem as some mom and pop store that's still trying to pay off the loans they took out when they were in 2020 and 2021. But that is something that has been said, obviously, out loud for Merck to say that.
Well, it smacks of the same disingenuous things that we've heard about this team's finances, about what's available to them, about the idea that, the fans are the problem, right? We don't show up. We don't show up, so they don't show out in terms of spending money on free agents. But it's not that. It can't be that the COVID year was really that big of a ding in their pocket because, first of all, everybody suffered it across baseball and hasn't stopped any other team. And secondly, we did show up after that because we were told that we were going to have a winning team. In fact, in 2021, we did have a winning team and we were there. And we saw some of the things that they did where they weren't even prepared in the playoffs for it to go beyond, the one game that they had hosted. So you can't sell that, realistically, if you're the White Sox and sit there and say, hey, we haven't recovered in 4 years from this, especially when it wasn't like the payroll was enormous. It wasn't like they went into the COVID year with a record of what they were paying for everybody. That was a rebuild year, man. Everybody was pretty cheap except for Abreu. He was the highest paid player, maybe Moncada at that point, had signed his contract. So no, I don't buy into that. I don't buy into it at all.
Sox in the Basement listeners, switch to a new age of life. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. Stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. They work with insurance and have 0% financing for qualified individuals. Hyatt Home Medical Equipment will help you with your CPAP machines. Unhappy with your vendor? Switch now. Get supplies directly mailed to you. They also have the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors. Learn all about Hyatt Home Medical Equipment at hhme.com. Ed, is there anything you are buying into?
I buy into the idea that Jerry he resents the Dodgers. He resents the teams that spend there's money is no option.
Which is amazing because they're going to share spring training with each other every year.
Oh my God.
Look what the Dodgers did this offseason, and they're going to be sharing the facility. That was something that Merck also touched on, Ed, was the idea that it's going to be a zoo on the other side of the field at Camelback Ranch, and then it's going to be, the team that had the worst record in baseball. I mean, it's going to be such a contrast looking at that, and it's got to grind Jerry. But the reason it's that way is because they're a well-run organization with good ownership. I mean, I am sick of people getting angry at what the Dodgers are doing. If you don't like it, then do something about it. Spend money, develop better, have a better system, find a way to do what the Dodgers do, especially the big market guys. The Dodgers have not won anything this year, and the Dodgers have spent a lot of money over the last several years, and they up until this last World Series, all they had was a shortened season World Series to hang their hat on. That never really felt valid because of the way that it worked with all the extra playoff teams and all the weird rules and stuff like that. So their only legit World Series, really, is the one that just happened. And they've been spending money for years. And people are all angry about it. And Jerry's angry about it. And my answer is this: do better.
Well, look at what the Dodgers, you and I have talked about the Dodgers at length before. And look at what they are. I mean, yes, they do have the ability to sign the Shohei Ohtanis to the record-breaking contracts because someone's going to do it. They also do have a lot of, for their example, their pitching staff tends to not be the big high-priced free agents. I know they just signed Sasaki, but he's not a big high-priced free agent. He's a get, based on what he seems to be capable of in his age, but he's still, he's not somebody that they just threw, okay, well, we'll throw $40 million a year at this kid. Nobody else can touch it. Everybody else had a chance to woo the guy, and they couldn't do it. And part of the reason is because I'm sure he looked at the Dodgers and went, well, one, it's the West Coast. I can maintain my fan base in Japan. So, I know that plays into it. And two, this is an opportunity to come in here and win. But they're not the Yankees that we used to have, right? When we complain about old man Steinbrenner, George, where he would sit there and just say, throw money at whatever free agent I need every offseason. I'm just going to buy them. And that's how we're going to build the team. The Dodgers at least do it the right way because they do use young talent to acquire other players. They do use young talent in addition to their high-priced free agents. And when they make a trade for somebody, they make sure that they are making a trade for somebody that they plan on holding on to, not somebody that's going to get them maybe 1 or 2 seasons and then they're going to have to let them go. So when they traded for Mookie Betts, who was one of the best players in baseball, they had every intention of trading for him and keeping him, right? And when they trade for Freddie Freeman, they have every intention of getting Freddie Freeman in that ballpark and not letting him go until he's done. They don't do that, but their other outfielders, I mean, they spent a lot of last year with James Outman as their center fielder, and James Outman isn't particularly good. They used a lot of Gavin Lux last year. Gavin Lux isn't particularly good. He's now in Cincinnati. Miguel Vargas was their starting shortstop. Miguel Vargas I wouldn't want him on the White Sox last year.
Yeah, and he's going to be a starter too. I mean, that's the other thing that came out of it, which I'm curious what you think. I asked Merck about the infield. We've been talking about that, and it really sounds like Vaughn is the first baseman. Vargas is going to be in the infield, likely a third. Like that's almost like a done thing. And with Rojas probably the second baseman. And Montgomery is who they'd like there, and if he isn't there at the beginning, he's going to be there very shortly thereafter. So we talk about all these other infielders. His take, at least, is that's the infield that they'd like to start with. So anybody else is an uphill battle. Like, I don't think Brian Ramos even has a chance, right? I don't see how Brooks Baldwin makes this team.
I don't see how.
I mean, we keep talking about Lenin Sosa and the way he's hitting, but I don't know where you're going to put him there. If he's the fifth infielder, then he could play all four positions, but not well. So, I mean, like, that'll be interesting. I guess you could put him in there and move guys around the DH and have him DH sometimes. And Chase Meidroth, I really believe was going to get a chance. And he did touch on the fact that he's going to get a chance, but he's not on the 40-man, and they may already in their brain have that infield. And I hate that infield. I hate it. Andrew Vaughn's a replacement level player who, Merck tried to defend him, and I get that he's not hitting 150. But when you're replacement level, $6 million for arbitration is an overpay. You can go out in free agency right now and spend $2 million for somebody that's replacement level. So he's an overpay, and he's a guy that has never come along. I hope that they figure out something to do with him, and they may have held on to him for various reasons, but he's not really good. And it's not even like he's a defensive specialist either. Like, we don't have to worry about anything, hit down the first base line. And then you got Vargas over there, who's got so many opportunities that have been given to him over the last couple of years, especially the Dodgers. And we're just kind of thinking that's the third baseman. Rojas, like I said, professional baseball player, but he's basically replacement level. He's supposed to be a guy that's at least professional as somebody takes his job. And Colson Montgomery was terrible last year and had a couple of good weeks at the end and did well in the Arizona Fall League. And you've seen so many guys do well in an Arizona Fall League who never become Major League Baseball players, let alone be a guy that should be playing one of the big positions on the field for you. And if you're rushing him in there, you're going to do the same thing to him that you did with Andrew Vaughn. You're going to do the same thing that you did with Gordon Beckham. And so I don't like that. I didn't like hearing him say that. It's not automatic what Merck says is what's going on. But again, he's really around the team. It concerned me.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's disheartening is the one thing you didn't want the White Sox to do coming off of a historically bad season is walk in with too many guys that are in positions where it's like, okay, this is almost predetermined. Now they've got to either really, really screw up, get hurt, or somebody's got to do something that's just out of this world to knock them off. Because you knew you would have Luis Robert Jr. He's going to be your center fielder. No one's taking that job from him unless he's hurt. You knew you would have some competition behind the plate, but Corey Lee walking into it's the only one with major league experience. You're not starting Matt Thies. You're not, none of that's happening. So you know that there's going to be at least competition there. But the idea that your infield is basically set with a failed prospect that you traded for that has never shown he can do it at the major leagues, a replacement level first baseman who is really running out of opportunities to show that his draft status, that he is elite or at least very good, right? Because that's what we're looking for. The next step from Andrew Vaughn would be he's a very good first baseman, whether defensively, offensively, or ideally both. And then to sit there and say your middle infield is Josh Rojas, who is, again, like you said, fine player. I keep seeing the clip come up of him where they were playing the White Sox and Merrill Kelly snags a line drive off of, I remember whose bat, and Rojas dives behind him because he's like ready to make the play if this gets past the pitcher. So, Josh Rojas starting at second base or being a presumptive starter once you signed him, I'm sort of okay with that.
I like him. That's the thing. I like him in the infield. He is the one guy out of those four that I'm like, that's a ball player. Like he could be one of those guys if he was on like a really good team, right? And somebody went down with an injury and they had to fill in with a Josh Rojas like for the last 3 months. He's not going to be the reason you don't win a title. He's not going to cause you any trouble. He's actually going to be a baller. He might have a few moments. That speaks to him, the idea that he's diving behind something that isn't even his ball because he's just trying to be Johnny on the spot with everything he does. And they need a guy like that in there, especially if you're going to take a rookie shortstop and have him stand over there. Like, you need him standing at second base. And now I'm almost understanding why he's going to be there, because you need a guy like that to be able to back up those other positions in the infield. But I like the idea of him. I don't know. I mean, he's not the problem with what that projected infield is.
Not at all. And that's the point is that you, like you said, you're rushing Colson Montgomery if you say he's going to start the season as the shortstop. No. Right now, you sit in there and you say Josh Rojas is starting at either short or second. And whoever plays the best out of a group of our top prospect, Colson Montgomery, who we've got all sorts of confidence in based on what he did in the Arizona Fall League. And we think last year at Charlotte, he had his lumps, but we know what kind of player he is. Gosh darn it, we really think that he's got a shot to be our starting shortstop. If that's what it is, okay, but Rojas is really the guy that's going to start there, okay. But then if Lenyn Sosa, Brian Ramos, Chase Meadroth, if none of these guys have any real chance, then first of all, why trade for one of them? And second of all, what is it that you're expecting to do with these guys? Because sticking them down at AAA doesn't help. Okay, depth is great, but it doesn't really make a difference if you can't put together a major league team.
And here's the problem with what you're telling us with what they're going to do, and Rojas he's definitely middle infield. He has not played a lot of short, and he is his worst as a defender at short.
Oh yeah,
he's not good at shortstop. So in reality, I think James Fox brought that up when he was on, is that I thought they got him because he would be standing at short. And then I look at his shortstop information. We're talking about a guy that's only played in 44 games, 35 of them he started there, 301 total innings. And you look at some of his stuff and like he's giving up runs. His metrics show that he gives up a solid amount of runs because of errors. His fielding percentage of short is .941 for the guys that still look at that percentage. But he's responsible for a lot of negative like impact run-wise in what he's giving up. So he hasn't done it very much. And over his career, that's only 2 different seasons in which he was even allowed to be at shortstop. This is not what he is. He's a second baseman primarily and a third baseman primarily. Like, that's what he's going to do. In fact, he's played more outfield than he's actually done playing shortstop. So the thing is, I don't know what the plan is if Montgomery isn't the shortstop. The plan has to be Brooks Baldwin or Chase Meadroth, because he is a shortstop in the minors, although all the projections and all the scouting stuff says he's really a second baseman because he doesn't have the arm for short. So you're going to put him in there. That would be a weird decision because he doesn't project to be that long term, even though he's been playing the majority of his time in the minors at short. He's really a second baseman. That's what all the scouting reports say if you look it up. All right. So you got him as an option. You got Baldwin as an option. Sosa as an option. Again, not a very good defensive player. It's going to be a problem when you're over there. So, that's the issue. They haven't done anything to address what if Colson Montgomery isn't ready. Because it's going to be a clown show out at short, at least defensively, if you go with the other options. Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money. Give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
The whole thing Chris Getz wanted to build around was the idea that the way you get good starting pitching and good relief pitching and the way that you avoid going into prolonged slumps is you are solid defensively. Spectacular if you can be, but solid defensively, because that saves your pitchers. That saves, runs. It just saves everything if you can catch the ball on a consistent basis. And I don't know enough about Vargas as a third baseman to sit there and say that his defensive value outweighs the poor batting that he's done when he's been a member of the Dodgers. I don't know that you can sit there and with a straight face. I don't even know about Colson Montgomery enough defensively to sit there and say that that's where this kid belongs. I know he projects that he can stay there, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's good. So if you've got an infield with Andrew Vaughn, who played some outfield, played some first base, isn't terrible at first, but isn't particularly great at first. You've got a number of second basemen who range from very good defensively with hopefully competent offense to a guy that might be, completely bat first. And then you've got a shortstop situation where nobody can really catch the ball except maybe adequately at best. And it's all bat first. That's not going to go well. I would almost rather be hearing that we're gonna watch them go into the season with another set of veterans that they know for a fact can field, and these guys are going to have to hit their way onto the team or prove themselves defensively to get on the team, than I would sit there and say it's just Colson Montgomery's time, because that just makes me cringe, because that is old school White Sox baseball. It's a prospect's time because it's time.
It's a weird thing right now. I mean, that's the thing. It's very strange to me that I can't figure out who's a good option at short. I'm not excited about any of the possibility that's over there. Look, I know we're not going to win anything. I know you're not excited about anything that's going on in this team, right? You're not excited about very much if you're a White Sox fan, right? Are you even excited about the possibility Luis Robert Jr. could get better? I mean, Merck was sitting there talking about the idea that he doesn't have a problem. He's one of the hardest working guys in there. Everybody thinks he's trying really hard. Okay, I'll take that. He's saying it. I don't doubt him that that's what's said about Luis Robert Jr., but I watched him go up to the plate an awful lot and swing as fast as he could at the worst pitches and go back to the bench. And Merck's like, well, that's his scouting report, is that you keep throwing outside on him until he stops swinging at that. And by this point, Luis Robert Jr. should know that. So him going up there and somebody throws three of them that are tailing out of the zone, he swings all three times half-heartedly and goes back to the bench. One person could say, well, that's a lot of effort. They're just getting him. And the other person would say, he should know by now that's what they're doing. Why is he doing that? I don't even know if I'm excited about his season, because if he has a really good first half, they're going to trade him. And if he doesn't have a really good first half, you're like, oh no, he ain't even going to be a piece that we can get rid of. So I don't know. There's not a lot to be excited about when it comes to this team. But what did you think about the Robert thing?
Yeah, I don't know what the defense is of Luis Robert Jr. this year, other than the injuries.
He did bring that up. He brought up the injuries. I mean, again, he brought it up. It's true, but he's got to take care of himself. Let's remind everybody of some things that we've learned over the last year or so about these injuries. A baseball body is different from a bodybuilder's body or a football player's body. It's all about being limber, and it's all about being flexible, and it's all about being stretched out. And if you go to the gym and lift weights and want to have this physique when you take your shirt off that makes all the girls drool, that may not be the best thing if you're going to be a baseball player. And Robert's training seems to be contrary to the training of a baseball player. And so when somebody says, well, he has a lot of injuries, then I respond, either somebody's not advising him how to do this, or he's too stubborn to do what he's supposed to be doing. So because all the videos are always lifting weights and getting jacked. And he doesn't need to necessarily be that. And it may be detrimental when what he should be doing is working on flexibility and making sure that there's less of a chance that he tears something. It's a different way of training.
Yeah. So as I'm going through looking, the guy I wanted to pull up here was Eric Davis of the Reds from back in the late 80s, beginning of the 90s. Okay. There's a 5-tool guy. Could do it all. It reminds me a lot of what Luis Robert Jr. is. And I realize I'm going back 35 years, but bear with me here. This guy, through his age 28 year, all right, is playing anywhere from 127 to 135 games. So that's a pretty normal workload. He's getting MVP votes. He is an all-star. He is just absolutely one of the best in baseball. doing everything. Injuries start to take their toll. In 91 and 92, he only manages to play 89 games in 76 games. Does this sound familiar? His numbers are depressed. He goes from hitting in the 280s, 270s down to 235, 230, somewhere in there, 228. OPS is down. All the stats are down. Comes back in 93, plays 131 games over the course of two teams, LA and Detroit, is not what he used to be in any way, shape, or form. And then basically starts to flounder as the rest of his career goes down. He only has a couple more good years down the road in his 30s, a couple of dead cat bounce years, right? Where he's come back and had something that resembles his heyday. But by then he's 34 with Cincinnati, and then he has another okay season with Baltimore in 98 when he's 36 years old. Luis Robert Jr. feels like a guy that's falling into that trap, right? Where he's got all the talent in the world, he's got all the tools in the world, but if he keeps having these nagging injuries, okay, eventually they are going to start to take their toll. And eventually what they're going to do is they're going to rob him of his timing because he's not playing baseball. They're going to rob him of his ability to adjust because when he comes back up and he's rusty and everybody knows you can throw him outside sliders all day long and he's just going to chase, but he can't adapt because he can't get enough reps in, it's going to cost him his livelihood here. So Luis Robert Jr. has to do two things this year that I would be excited about. One is stay on the field for basically a full workload, okay? And two, show me that you've adapted, because without that, it doesn't matter how you look with your shirt off. I mean, it kind of does in certain circumstances, but not as far as I'm concerned in the stands. But it doesn't really matter how many tools you came into the league with. It's what do you have now, okay? Talk to me about Eloy Jimenez after he tore his pec and whether or not he's got any power left. But without his power, Eloy Jimenez is very, very pedestrian. And
he's a minor league deal. And look, the thing that's important for you is take care of yourself. And I can't believe you made it through a whole show. And I want you to rest now after doing all that talking. And I don't want you getting any more fired up than you already are. And this is why I wouldn't have sent you to a White Sox game. This is why I didn't chip in. I was like, oh my God, you're going to get him all fired up and he's going to be eating ballpark food. He's going to drop dead by the fifth inning. Okay, so the important thing for you is...
Well, they could have sent me to a Bears game next year when Ben Johnson has another 5-turnover game.
Oh, that would have driven you nuts too. I think that's a good hire though. This isn't a Bears show though. This is a White Sox show and an Ed Get Well Soon show, okay?
All right.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.